We have live team coverage of a city in crisis.
First, we begin with Amy Simpson and the latest on that officer-involved shooting. Amy?
Well, Mary and Kai, tonight we're still waiting to learn from police the name and age of that suspect involved and killed this morning. But tonight, a source telling Fox 45 that suspect's brother also recently killed. His memorial held just this weekend.
Like 6 or 7 gunshots.
A new week.
He's dead. I seen the police pumping on his chest.
Violence descending on this West Baltimore neighborhood. Not even 10 a.m. near Westwood Ave and North Ellamont Street. Baltimore police says 2 officers were parked in an unmarked car, doing what they call covert surveillance for a domestic violence warrant.
There was a suspect that pulled into the block in a nondescript vehicle, exited that vehicle, and then opened fire into our officer's surveillance vehicle, striking one of our officers in the upper thigh.
Commissioner Michael Harrison says the injured officer returned fire, hitting the suspect several times. That suspect pronounced dead at shock trauma. Right now, we don't know if the man killed was the reason police were in the neighborhood at all.
It is unclear if that person is associated with the surveillance or was the intended target of the surveillance.
Baltimore's mayor-elect also reacting to the violence.
And let it be known that you cannot and will not be able to just walk around our city with guns without being held accountable.
For some in the neighborhood, tension with police was clear.
It could have been avoided, man. They gotta learn how to deal with us.
BPD says a gun was recovered at the scene.
The message is
clear.
clear.
The police commissioner says his officers were there for a reason.
The members of our police department are proactive and were where they were supposed to be, doing what they were supposed to do, actually looking for a violent offender to arrest.
But tonight, the investigation now in the hands of homicide detectives. And tonight, it's the police commissioner says that those officers are assigned to have body cameras, but it's unclear at this point because of the covert nature of their operation if they were wearing those cameras or if they were recording.
Commissioner, good morning. Good morning. I am joined by our mayor-elect, Brandon Scott, my deputy commissioner of public integrity, Brian Nadeau, and our lead consent decree monitor, Ken Thompson. At or around 9:41 a.m. this morning, members of our warrant apprehension task force were doing a surveillance for a domestic violence warrant at the intersection of Ellamont and Westwood. There was a suspect that pulled into the block in a nondescript vehicle, exited that vehicle, and then opened fire into our officer's surveillance vehicle, striking one of our officers in the upper thigh. Our officers, or at least one of our officers, returned fire, striking this suspect multiple times. Our officers exited their surveillance vehicle and rendered aid to the suspect until medical attention arrived. Both our officer and the suspect were transported to shock trauma, where the suspect was pronounced dead at 10:15 a.m. this morning. I have personally spoken with Dr. Scalea, who advised me that our officer at the moment, which was only a few minutes ago, was in good condition. We know he has a gunshot wound to the upper thigh, but was in good condition, alert and talking, and in good spirits. We have a suspect firearm that was recovered on the scene, which we believe was used to shoot our officer. And our officers were actually doing the surveillance in a nondescript covert vehicle during that surveillance. And I think the message is clear. This violence has to stop, but the members of our police department are proactive and were where they were supposed to be, doing what they were supposed to do, actually looking for a violent offender to arrest, and were attacked by a suspect who is now dead as a result of his actions. But our wishes go out to the officer. I will be speaking to our officer in the very near future. As soon as the opportunity presents itself, we want to wish him well. But our video release policy is enacted as of this moment. We know for a fact both officers had body-worn cameras, but since they were in a covert capacity doing a surveillance, it is unknown at this time if those cameras were on them or were even turned on at the moment. We know that they actually had them. And so we will be enacting that video release policy as we speak. Once again, the lead consent decree monitor is here on the scene, assessing our performance of how we handle these matters. Certainly we'll report back to the Department of Justice and the judge who oversees our federal consent decree as soon as possible. This time I'll turn it over to our mayor-elect for a few comments.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, and good morning. First, I just want to ask the citizens of Baltimore to wish our officer well in a speedy recovery. I think the commissioner said it best. This showcases that we know that we still have a violence problem in Baltimore City, and BPD is engaged and will be further engaged in dealing with the individuals who are carrying that out, much like they were doing here today. Domestic violence is a serious thing in our city, and it cannot be tolerated, which is why they were here. And we just have to let folks understand and let it be known that you cannot and will not be able to just walk around our city with guns without being held accountable. And again, we wish the officer a speedy recovery. Thank you.
This time we'll take a few questions.
Can you explain how this individual walked up to the undercover surveillance? How did he know? Because it seems like the officers did not have any conversation with him. They were just sitting doing their job, monitoring.
It appears he pulled his car alongside their car. One vehicle's facing one way, his vehicle was facing the opposite way, so he would have had to have exited the driver door of his vehicle and then opened fire into our vehicle. And our officer returned fire while sitting inside of the vehicle, striking the suspect at least more than once.
Can you tell us how long they were doing surveillance parked in the area?
That would be part of a covert investigation, so I don't want to reveal any tactics or techniques or protocols to compromise that.
Sorry, the suspect that was shot, is that the one who was being surveilled for the domestic violence warrant, or was it a different person?
It is unclear if that person is associated with the surveillance or was the intended target of the surveillance. We're working to ascertain that information as we speak.
Can you tell us anything about the officer? Anything else about the officer? How long he's been with the department?
Those are details that we will be putting out much later. Right now, we're wishing the officer a speedy recovery, making sure the officer's family has been notified, that I can and other leaders can speak with the officer first.
Was the officer who was shot the one who returned fire?
To our knowledge, it is the person who returned fire, yes.
How many officers were in the vehicle?
There were 2 officers in the vehicle, one in the driver's seat, one in the passenger.
Was there backup anywhere in the area, or were they just doing this as a pair?
Right now, that's still part of the covert operation, and certainly the answer to that reveals tactics and techniques.
Can you give the age of the suspect, how old?
We don't have that information as we speak, sir, but the moment we get that and we can confirm that that suspect's family has been appropriately notified, we'll be releasing that information.
Do you know whether or not it was just gunfire from a suspect, gunfire from one officer? Is that the only gunfire we're thinking right now?
What we believe right now is there was gunfire from that one suspect and gunfire from at least one of the officers. All right?
Do the officers believe that the individual that they were issuing a warrant for may be dangerous or pose a threat?
Well, it was
It was a domestic violence.
It was a domestic violence warrant, and the warrant apprehension task force usually is the appropriate division to go out and pick up people who have warrants for both felony and misdemeanor warrants.
The only reason I ask is because if he was known to maybe pose a threat, that's why I asked, would there have been backup somewhere in the area?
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.